Hey, Kang,
Hey Alex, what's up?
you need to tell me one thing. What do you think is the most competitive TCG out there at the moment?
I actually think it's Flesh and Blood, but I had no time yet to play it.
Wow, okay, that's a surprise actually, your answer to me. But before we dive deeper into that, I want to welcome all the viewers to the second episode of the Fabled Academy Podcast. And thank you so much for taking the time, Kang, to come here at the Fabled Academy.
Yeah, of course, from my old friend from Team Trend and from Yu-Gi-Oh, I can always spare a bit of time.
Thanks, man. That's awesome. Yeah, it's nice that we see each other again here after all this time. And I'm super excited to talk to you exactly about this, like your Yu-Gi-Oh past, because actually you're a professional TCG player, and you switched your career path, right? You switched from playing Yu-Gi-Oh mostly to Disney Lorcana in this year, right?
Yes, exactly. I switched exactly in June this year, so it's about like half a year ago, from playing Yu-Gi-Oh like almost every weekend to playing Lorcana once per month, basically, because we only had so many majors. And yeah, overall, I can say I didn't regret the change, but of course, we will talk more about it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll not only talk about your switch from Yu-Gi-Oh to Lorcana, but also later on in the video take a little bit on Flesh and Blood, but that is for the end. So let's just start with how long do you actually play TCGs in general?
So competitively, I started Yu-Gi-Oh or like Magic. I started Magic to be honest. First in 2015, I played for like half a year. Like locals, tried to play meta and so on. Like not attending any major events, just playing that. And then I had a friend who wanted to go to locals and play draft. And then I saw Yu-Gi-Oh players, and I was always intrigued by Yu-Gi-Oh building a deck, building a meta deck, doing cool combos, and then just having a cool end board. So I watched them play instead of playing the draft with my friend, and I just asked, "Yo, can I buy a meta deck from someone?" Unusual question to be honest, because normally like nobody has a spare tier one deck lying around, right? So, but some people had Shadow, and I just started buying it right in the end of 2015. Of course, Yu-Gi-Oh players know what happened at that time. The ban list hit with the Shadow construct, so it literally destroyed my entire deck 1 week after I bought it. That was my first Yu-Gi-Oh experience, but that's how I started playing it. And after the ban list hit and obliterated my deck, I continued playing it with like um, rogue decks that people sold me for like $50 or so, and I just kept going. And my journey started, really competitive journey started 2016 when I attended my first major events with my friends that I made during locals. And over the time, I also made friends with the Team Trent group, like yourself, Kian, Lucas, Henry, and so on, right? And yeah, from there on out, I just developed more and more as a TCG player, and also delve deeper into what it means to be a competitive TCG player, traveling, and also started traveling to NA events not
Hmm.
so long ago. It's like I think last year I started traveling to NA events and to Canadian events and South American events. So yeah, my international career didn't even start that long ago, but I can say I play TCG roughly for 8 years now, like
Yeah.
competitively.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I didn't knew that you were tackling with Magic the Gathering in the beginning too. We'll talk about your decision in more depth later in on the podcast, but yeah, you definitely touched on my second question already, and that is like, on what level did you play during the last 8 years? Like, why did you decide even to go that step further and then fly over the world and actually participate in bigger events with other regions?
So at the beginning in Yu-Gi-Oh, I started casual like everybody, but I feel like for myself, I always want to be like what I would call like casual competitive, where not playing at a high level, but I try at least to play meta decks, try to discuss me- um, meta decks with people and so on, right? Like not try to homebrew something. Like really always try to keep up with the top players. Of course, I wasn't a top player, but I tried to. And with everything I play, I wanted to not min-max everything, but at least try to play the best. And over the time, when you play TCG and have a friend group, I think everybody will start going to majors, right? And when you find the first success, and maybe the second one, you get the taste of what it means to be at the top. So at that point, when I got my first major top in Yu-Gi-Oh, I think it was a German national top 4. Like I wasn't remotely prepared to get that far. Like I was suddenly just at the top. Like I just kept winning, and in top 4 I just bricked against a good matchup. So I was like, okay, that felt bad, but overall it was a great run. Then my second top came on my YCS top 8 in Prague. Again, I didn't even expect myself to be there, and suddenly I had 2 tops. Team Trent wanted me, so I played for Team Trent, for example, and also at a later point, bigger teams want you, so then you join the bigger teams to get like more testing partners to get known in the scene, basically. So at that point, I was just like going with the flow, basically. For Lorcana, it was a bit different because so I decided to play at a high level or at the highest level directly because of my Yu-Gi-Oh experience, right? I knew what it needs or like what it takes to be at the top, like what you have to train for, what you have to prepare yourself at the money-wise also for all the travels, right? So I knew that already, so I was like, okay, I can afford it, I have the time and I have the resources for everything, so let's just go in. That's how I decided for Lorcana. But for Yu-Gi-Oh, I just went with the flow. At some point, my friends all told me, yo, do you want to join NA events? Oh, and like one trip we went was YCS Toronto into YCS Cancun. So we did back to back and had a great vacation in Cancun. So that was awesome. Like we basically like had two YCS plus 2-week vacation on top.
Nice.
And many people do it, right? They combine vacation and a major event for TCGs. So basically they have an excuse to travel. That's also what I like to do right now. For Lorcana, at least, I mainly travel for the events. I don't visit the city most of the time because I saw them already or I didn't want to see anything there. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So I thought it was very special, like seeing you online. You're posting on Twitter during those times, flying for Yu-Gi-Oh over to North America, Canada, and so on. And so I thought it was very special to see that. I don't think there are like hundreds and hundreds of people doing it from Europe, right? So it's kind of an outstanding experience that you had. And also it shaped you in a way that, you were searching for another TCG and want to talk with you about that. But before we come to that switch, actually, I want to know, like, what was your favorite part about that Yu-Gi-Oh journey that you had? And do you still play it from time to time?
My favorite part was meeting the people and building up connections, because that's what will keep you going in this game. It's not, of course, the gameplay itself is also really fun, especially if you like the gameplay of Yu-Gi-Oh, where you have basically no resource that you need to play cards compared to basically every other game. And but over time, you will also realize that the game is getting power creep like by itself, like immensely, and it can take the fun out of the game sometimes, like some formats do. But your friends is what keeps you going, like meeting them at events and having fun with them. It's really nice. It's like I had bad formats. I played through many bad formats, tier 0 formats that where decks were literally unbeatable if you don't play them. For example, my YCS Prague top, right? That I played against Spyro all day. Like Spyro was so insane. I sacked them. Like I had so much luck with my hand traps. But still, like if you didn't play Spyro at that time, it was like really hard. And yeah, overall, making the friends, making the trip worth just by spending time with them was my absolute favorite part. For the playing, right now I don't play it anymore. I still watch it. I still keep up with it just in case I want to play. Like my plan was when I switched that I still want to attend the major events like YCS Bologna, YCS Birmingham, at least the ones that are quite easy to reach and also quite cheap in comparison. But every single time I want to book, I was like, the format wasn't optimal. The money I would have to spend is also not great. So I found an excuse basically every single time to not go. Uh, but overall, right now I don't play. I intend to play the next year probably again. I also need my invite for the European Championship, so I have to play either way. But this format now, since Fire is like obliterated and Ryziel and so on, it's a XYZ deck right now. It looks really fun. I can imagine myself playing that format, to be honest.
So yesterday I talked to Simon Nielsen, a former Magic the Gathering professional player, who also delves into Flesh and Blood. And I talked to him about this topic too, because it is a real, not only time-intensive task to overcome to play many TCGs, right, on a professional level or at a high level. And I'm very, very interested to hear your opinion on this, because, like you said, you switched to Lorcana, but you're keeping an eye out still on Yu-Gi-Oh! And what is it really that is a challenge, not only with keeping up on the meta, but definitely trying to be one of the best in multiple games?
So I think being the best in multiple games, like being actually the best, is almost impossible when you have like other obligations because it just takes too much time to prepare for both, especially when you have multiple major events lining up. You can do it. I know some people are managing multiple TCGs with great success, especially in One Piece and other TCGs. But it also depends mainly on how deep you have to delve into each TCG to have success. Let's say Yu-Gi-Oh is at the highest level when you are in the game. It is not that hard, but when you are like coming from a mid-level or even completely outside of Yu-Gi-Oh, you need to spend 1,000 hours, like at least, to get to the top level because it's so much information that you need to learn, so many rulings that you cannot even read up. You need to know them by asking people or like experiencing them. Like I know so many rulings that you cannot literally read them up. Like you have to have a random link to a random source from like 2008 or so to to get the source of that ruling. So there's so much to know, so much to learn in Yu-Gi-Oh to be consistently successful. So I cannot imagine myself ever playing Yu-Gi-Oh at the highest level and something like Lorcana and or like even Yu-Gi-Oh One Piece Lorcana, something like that. I cannot imagine myself that. But something like Lorcana, you can play a secondary TCG that is not that's not that complicated too, because Lorcana itself is quite new and it has its depth, especially against other pro players, right? When you play against like I played the Continentals last weekend, and I faced, of course, the best of the best, and then there's depth to it, but in general, Lorcana is quite easy in comparison to other TCGs, especially because we only have 6 sets, so it's still quite vanilla most of the time. So I can imagine myself like playing another TCG right now that is quite fresh next to Lorcana. I mean, I wanted to play One Piece, but most majors of One Piece collided with Lorcana overall, so I couldn't. For example, last weekend was the finals in Utrecht, which is basically the Continentals for One Piece and the Lorcana Continentals. And for example, I'm the only person in the world who can play right now who has the invite for both NA and U Continentals in Lorcana. And the NA Continentals in Lorcana collide with the Latin finals of One Piece. So I cannot attend that too. So I'm like, right now I cannot play One Piece at all. So that is also the difficulty when you try to play multiple TCGs. You have to check if the major events are colliding, and if too many are colliding, it's not that much fun if you miss so many majors, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a timing question for sure. Like, not only the task to be a master in many TCGs, but also maybe if it's even possible to attend the tournaments. That's also like was a big thing for Simon as well. And I don't want to go into depth into that now, but let's just talk more about like, why did you even want to join a new TCG? Like, what was that like final moment that came to you where you thought like, it's over for me with pursuing the Yu-Gi-Oh thing, and then what's next?
Okay, Yu-Gi-Oh was always I'm like oh Yu-Gi-Oh always have a space in my heart, mainly because Yu-Gi-Oh carried me through a bad time in my life. I don't want to talk that much about it, but Yu-Gi-Oh for many people they hold Yu-Gi-Oh the same, right? They have Yu-Gi-Oh in their heart. They carry it with a passion, and I get it. And I also would have continued playing Yu-Gi-Oh, but then everybody, like in the end of 2023, everybody posted about their winnings, like the prize money and whatever of other TCGs, and I saw it already. I'm like, damn. Even if I was crazy in Yu-Gi-Oh, I wouldn't even had like 10% of that. And then
Yeah,
in my head, of course, when you see that kind of money by playing TCGs, you would think, ah, I maybe want that too. But of course, it's not everything about the pricing. What was giving me like, what was the last straw? Basically, was when I played the French nationals and all the events I did before. Right, I grinded again for the playoffs. I faced the formats and the repetitiveness of Yu-Gi-Oh, which in the end I was like, damn, what am I doing this for in the end? I had my fun in Yu-Gi-Oh! It carried me through a bad time, but right now I don't enjoy it that much. And many people had the same sentiment, right? That's why many people switched, like many pro players switched. Some went back to Yu-Gi-Oh, but they never would never go back to the high level, high commitment they did before. And that was also my main reason. Like, if I commit so much time, like really, really much time, like you don't even know what a crazy Yu-Gi-Oh player has to do, like how many hours they have to grind DB and so on to learn every single interaction, because the decks are so fast. Sometimes you do like one small thing wrong, you're getting OTK'd, one turn kill for people that don't know, and I just couldn't justify it anymore for the winnings you get. Right now they improved the pricing a bit, really nice for the people who still play. But for me, it was like the other TCGs have mulligans, they have better pricing, they have better rule sets. The
mm,
community is not toxic at all. Like, I mean, One Piece kind of gets toxic because many people switch from other games to One Piece first before they switch to Lorcana. So, like, I can imagine if Lorcana was released earlier than One Piece, the toxicity in Lorcana would be much higher. But right now, the community is really nice. Everything is like so nice to each other. Everybody's nice to each other in that game. Like, I barely witness anything that is remotely toxic. And that's what I also like very much. But yeah, my main, or like the thing that sparked the fire basically was the pricing, and then everything else just steamroll. Like the community, the game, the rule sets, and the speed of the game. When I play tested, or like when I started playing One Piece and Lorcana, I just realized, damn, I do one move pass like the first turn. In Lorcana, I inked one card. It's like basically I'm playing a land in Magic. Pass. Play one character, pass. In One Piece,
yeah,
I do the same. I either play like a low drop or not, pass. I'm like, damn. In Yu-Gi-Oh, I would be comboing right now. And I didn't want to do that anymore. Although I can see the reason why people like that. Like, sometimes I also
yeah,
enjoyed it. Sometimes playing slow games also bores me, but right now I really enjoy playing the slower games.
yeah, yeah. So I think this prize money question is kind of controversial, also for a lot of people that are focusing on Yu-Gi-Oh and still want to play that game at a high level, right? But what is really like the question for you that you say like the prize money is so crucial for me too? Maybe you can lay it out a little bit more in depth. Like why is that topic so important to you?
It is not that important because so I built a kind of a name for myself, right? I don't really need the Yu-Gi-Oh prize money. I can make a lot of coaching too.
Yeah.
So I didn't really need the price, the better pricing. But the thing is, Yu-Gi-Oh or like Konami can see what the other TCGs are doing, right? And now they have the decision. Okay, do we want to keep up with, or do we just want to stay here? And their decision right now is like, we just stay low. We just stay where we are, basically. Even they increase a bit, but it's still like laughable compared to everything else. They can do so many things that are quite easy to achieve. They don't have to put money on the line because they will never will, but other TCGs are also not doing that. But they can do alternative arts of meta cards, which Lorcana is doing, for example, for the first promos, which is like quite insane. Like Ash Blossom. They can do alternative art for Ash Blossom, put a YCS stamp on it. Suddenly everybody wants it that has money in the game, right? They want to play it even. Like you can win it, sell it to Puck, he will buy it, like definitely. You can sell it to other pro players who has the money, right? And that's what I don't like. Basically the disrespect they are giving to us players. We spend so much love, so much time into the game, and they just don't want to improve it. And of course, you can cry about it all the time. Many people cried over years, right? I cried about it, I don't know, 5 years ago. But now I finally pulled the trigger. And it's not only about that other TCGs have better pricing. It's also about I finally had enough. But because many people also asked, why now? And I'm like, I just had enough. And I will go through with it. I will pull through. And right now I stay to my word that I just don't want to take part in that grind anymore. I will try to play like a major here and there just for fun though. Really just for fun. Like I won't try to grind like 10 hours, 20 hours each day before the event to win it. I just would take a list, maybe even I don't know, buy coaching and just get a list and play it for fun. But that's it. Like I won't try to grind it anymore. And the pricing thing is, right now I actually don't even care about the pricing that much. I care more about what's around it. Like I always cared more what was around it. Like for example, at one DLC, which is the YCS, it's a major event for Lorcana. We had some complaints. Next event, everything was solved. Like, like they improved it immediately. Like immediately. That's the craziest part. Or when you complain about something, the staff will literally take you to the side and solve the problem. Like they will solve it, like right then there. And there's so much things that they just do better, and I like that. And it's not only Lorcana, it's also other TCGs. If you watch the quality of our streams of the DLCs, it's insane, right? Like they just started out and have this insane stuff. Of course, the European stream, I think the NA2 improved a lot now for Yu-Gi-Oh, but they still have so much to do. And that's my main point right now. Like the pricing is cool. Most people earn enough money. They don't care about the pricing. But still, it's a huge thing when you spend hours and hours in Yu-Gi-Oh and get basically a display for top 16, or when you play Lorcana and get like an invite for Continentals and a prize card that's 4 figures, another prize card that's almost 4 figures, and that's still like a huge difference, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's a reward for the player too, right? That takes the time and the effort to really master the game at a high level. And not only is it about playing the game, right? You're taking the effort to really dive into it with your whole heart. You are traveling all around the world for it. You're preparing the year even for those events, right? You're taking the time to really dive into the world of this game and also be like a supporter in a way that you're also bringing a speech for it up in online. Like as I saw you, for example, posting about going to other countries to play Yu-Gi-Oh, like it always sparks something, right? And it makes me sad to see then when like players like you don't get the reward that they really should get in those games like Yu-Gi-Oh. But I'm happy for you that you found a way. With Disney Lorcana for sure. And I think that's basically like the next part of this video. Like, why did you even like discover Lorcana in the first place? I mean, you talked about Magic the Gathering being one of your first games, and then also One Piece was a consideration. But how did Lorcana came up?
So I always want to have, I want to be able to attend major events. So the first thing I thought about was major events. I want to play a game where I can actually play many major events as possible, like in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's my passion, just going to the major events and try to perform there. Like, doesn't even matter if I actually perform or not. I just want the ability to go there. And first I started with One Piece, actually, not with Lorcana, with One Piece. And the thing about One Piece is, for the real life events, getting tickets is really difficult. It's actually really difficult because they sold out so fast. And you can always, so from my experience, you can most times still go there and get a ticket on site, but still, like, if you don't have a ticket safe before you travel, right, it feels bad. But some people still travel there to get a ticket on site, and most of the time it works. But for me, I just saw, okay, again, I didn't get a ticket. I applied for another ticket. I tried to buy it. Again, I didn't get a ticket. A friend of mine always got his, so I was like, oh, that's weird. And so I knew One Piece was a bit difficult to get into, especially when they put out their submission, the form where you can put your data in to get the continental, or like the continental tickets, because there were 3 in the beginning, and I got 0 out of the 3. I'm like, okay, I literally cannot play One Piece. They don't let me play One Piece. In the end, I still got a ticket, but I had no time for the date they gave me, so I was like, cool. Doesn't work for me either way. So in Lorcana, I started mainly because of Hani Javari. It's a Yu-Gi-Oh player, a real known one of the best. And he talked to me like about 1 hour about Lorcana. Like, he just told me about Lorcana, how good it is, how good the pricing is, everything I need to know about the game. And I was like, I always want to start Lorcana. I kind of regret not starting earlier because it was Disney, right? Disney, big tournaments and so on. But I always was in the. I was, how do you say it? I was basically caged by Yu-Gi-Oh! Like in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Bubble, you know what I mean? Like, it is quite difficult to quit it when you have all your friends in Yu-Gi-Oh! When you know nobody in the new TCG, right?
Yeah.
Like, I literally know 0 people from Lorcana before I started. So I had nobody to hold my hand to get into the game. And after Hani's the call of Hani, I just tried it out. I had Pixel board for half a day, I think. That is the sim for Lorcana before they shut it down. And I played it. I tried to learn the rulings just by playing instead of learning them regularly, instead of reading. And I was like, the game's cool. I would try it out. And when I when I check out the major events, I saw there was an event in America, but it was sold out 2 weeks ago, so I couldn't get it because the events in America are sold out really fast compared to Yu-Gi-Oh! To Europe. But I still went to the website PPG, and suddenly there was a ticket online. There was literally one ticket online. I pressed book, buy, pay, and I got it. I'm like, that's weird, because after I bought it, it was sold out again. So it was like at 2 a.m. in Germany, and they just put out one canceled ticket back up again, and I was like, wow, I just got it. That has to be a sign. Of course, it's superstition, but I was like, it has to be a sign. And then I started playing the game a bit more, tried to learn it, try to understand it. And I also, directly after that, we got the tickets for DLC Bochum, and that was my first event. And that's how I started my journey there and how I discovered it, basically. And right from the beginning, as I mentioned before, I knew what it takes to go to get to the top, right? I just decided let's go for every DLC there's left. And there were 6 left I could attend from of 10. But 2 were overlapping. So overall I could have attended 8, but I just said, okay, I will attend 6. Even doesn't matter how much it will cost me, I will just attend it. Because technically I only need to bubble one event to offset the cost for the next event. But suddenly I just kept topping and topping, so the money flew in, and I didn't have to worry about the money anymore. But of course, still the time, right? It takes a lot of time. You have to plan ahead. Like you need like 5 days at least from Thursday the week before and until at least Tuesday the week after. So at least 5 days to play the game. It's even more, 6 days, right? But yeah. Otherwise, it cannot work. You have to travel earlier because of potential delays with your plane, with your flight. So yeah, that's my story how I discovered Lorcana and how I delve into Lorcana.
Yeah. So you decided to switch to Lorcana, right? And we talked about One Piece here in comparison, like. Of course, but there are also some other games. Like, did you consider any other games like Magic, Pokemon, or Flesh and Blood to be, your next adventure?
As I mentioned before, I like one of the reasons why I switched was the new rule set. So I didn't want to play older games like Magic and Pokemon, although they have a really good established major system, right? Major event system, especially Pokemon. Like in Pokemon, in my opinion, has like one of the best because you go in there, the stream, the event itself, the venue, you feel like a Pokemon trainer. It's so cool. And but it has old rule sets. The Mulligan Pokemon is really bad. You can only Mulligan if you don't have a base Pokemon, right? And then your opponent can draw one more card or whatever. I forgot. And the Magic has a land system, which I don't really enjoy. I don't like lands. So that's what I really like about One Piece or Lorcana. They're newer games. They have newer concept of mana, ink, whatever, like resources. One Piece has the extra deck where you put Don into, that's Don, right? You get 2 each turn. So you get automatic resources. And Lorcana, you have to choose what card in your hand you won't need in this matchup or probably won't need. And that's also adding another layer of skill, which I also really enjoy. And yeah, One Piece I didn't. Well, I wanted to play One Piece and Lorcana at the same time, but I can only take like smaller major events of One Piece right now because everything overlaps. And Flesh and Blood is the most interesting thing. I still try to keep up with the game. Like I looked into it, but the main problem of Flesh and Blood is it's probably even more time consuming than Yu-Gi-Oh! If you want to play at the top. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Is already a game where I say I cannot play a secondary game next to it if I want to be at the top. So I don't know. I might start it next year if I don't know find someone to play with. But right now I'm just saying it's just too time consuming mainly. But I really like the concept of Flesh and Blood, like how the resources work with pitching and how you get your resources back into the deck and it's really like you have to plan so much in this game and calculating and so on. So I really like that. And yeah, I would definitely look into it next year, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, we will talk about Flesh and Blood a little bit on later. But let's talk about that competition for you in your life actually that you're pursuing in this TCG career. Like it is definitely completely differently from when you started like 8 years ago playing Shadol in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? When you go to those tournaments. I mean, the core fundamentals of playing the TCGs must be the same for you today, but how is it like actually that you're tackling this profession when going to Lorcana events?
So right now, I think I can definitely say that I profited a lot of my Yugioh knowledge for Lorcana because so many things that I can apply was, for example, like how to test, how to apply certain logics like deck building and so on. Even though, of course, Lorcana is a different game and it is the pace of the game is like completely different, you can still apply a lot of it. And it worked at the beginning, definitely, because the game was still slow. And like the concept of card economy and so on, everything was still like the same in both games. You can imagine Lorcana as like slow Yu-Gi-Oh, like old school Yu-Gi-Oh, basically. Of course, the concept's a bit different, but the speed and so on and the trading is almost the same. And it helped me a lot by just knowing how I have to deal with these concepts to have a quick start. Because right now I think I barely know any good or like top level Lorcana player that didn't come from another TCG, and that's something that's kind of unfair, of course, too. But of course, experience is always something you can profit off in your life, and yeah, the experience of coming from Yu-Gi-Oh helped me a lot. In general, in Lorcana right now, or like as a TCG player, or how should I put it? Lorcana gives you so much prize money that it's quite feasible to play it as a main game. Like you can definitely live on coaching and then playing Lorcana, but of course you need to be successful. So I don't recommend being a full-time TCG player or whatever in this game. But of course, if you have a normal job and play it normally and top here and there, it's quite a nice bonus. But yeah, the challenges of TCG player, like you have to travel a lot in Lorcana because the events are like, we barely have events this year. What I can say is like in Europe you had 4 events. That's not much, right? So if you want more events, you had to fly over to America, and that costs a lot. So that was a huge thing. I think next year they will like increase the events, but right now, yeah, it didn't look good for anyone who really wanted to just grind major events and without flying to America.
And the last tournament that you played in, right? It's the European Championship called in Lorcana. Like, what was your experience like there? Because it's also the first Auftakt, as we say in German, for the World Championship, right?
Mm. So I can only say, or I can only compare it to Yu-Gi-Oh, where we have the European Championship in Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's basically like a YCS, like any other major event. You needed the invite, but getting the invite in Yu-Gi-Oh is quite easy. Just not even top high, like play a regional, play smaller tournaments at your locals called OTS championships, play a major event, play a national. You normally get your invite somewhere, and it's quite easy. In Lorcana, you need to be top 16 at the DLC, which is the major event, which is like 1,000 or 2,000 people. So it's quite difficult. Like you actually need to top quite deep into a DLC to get an invite. Or there was a last chance qualifier where you needed to go 5-0 in a single elimination. So there were 30 people in 32 people in 32 pots. So there were 32 tournaments, and you needed to win one of them. And you had 2 shots for the European one. In NA, you only have 1 shot. So you have to go 5-0, you're a bust, or you're out. So it's quite hard. And that's how you get in. So overall, we were 96 players in the European Continental, and it felt insane. It felt like a VIP tournament. Like we were separated from the other players who played above, like in the extra room. We were 96 players. We had our own catering. We had drinks and everything for free. It's like it felt insane if you compare it to Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm like, I was sitting there and eating like, what did you eat? I think it was the duck or something, and I was like, damn, what am I doing here? I'm playing TCG, I'm getting catered, I was invited, so I didn't have to pay, so it was insane. I got promos and whatever is also worth money. I got so much from just being there, and of course, if I managed to top and went towards even more, right? But it felt like just a surreal experience. Like the first time in my life, I felt like a VIP player basically, which is quite nice. And yeah, that was like literally the best part out of it. And else the normal DLC are also really well organized. For example, the NA one, that's the craziest part. I never saw this before. So for the top cut in day 2, everybody had to submit the deck in like a plastic bag, and they would deck check every single deck. It felt like an insane operation every single time. It's really crazy. It's like they deck check, so you start like with a slight delay, and they deck check everything, and every single time you finish your game and you won, you have to submit the deck again, and they would take it away like to their special table, and then you will receive the deck like, you know, like it's something special, you know. It's so funny.
It's crazy. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
they put so much effort into
Yeah.
keeping the integrity of the tournament up, so I really like that.
Man, it sounds like awesome. Honestly, like it's also like you said, holding up to the integrity of being a game like where, yeah, you can feel safe not only as a beginner but also as someone competing at the highest level. And like it was also special. Like it was in Disney World, right? It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it was in the hotel of Disneyland in Paris, right next to Disneyland land itself, so you can just walk over basically. You also got a discount for the ticket, so just the venue itself was so funny. Like you just sitting there next to Disneyland, you're in the lobby of the hotel. You get all the Disney vibes already, so it's just a different vibe. Like it's just different. You have to be there to realize it. And also, we had like a surprise guest, like what was it? The Mickey Mouse artist, the French voice actress of uh, Moana, I think, right? Um, she was there singing her
Yeah.
signature songs. For example, "How Far Ago." It was really nice. I really enjoyed that. This was like so nice, and yeah, so many things happened there that you just didn't get at other TCGs. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. So I think one crucial thing to talk about is also like the environment that you're going into with those people that you're meeting in Disney Lorcana, because as you said, it's quite difficult to jump out of a game where basically all of your social circle is into and then go down a new road, right? I remember even going first time to Yu-Gi-Oh locals, which was like a huge step for me back then, not knowing anyone basically. And then going there, meeting Lucas, and he was like, "Yeah, we also have a player from Paderborn here. You need to meet him. He's called Leonard." And basically, then the things trickled, right? But how was it for you? Like when you go out and played Lorcana and try to meet other players that are also wanting to take it serious?
I actually had so much luck because I met people on like people reach out to me because they saw, yo, Dinh Khang Pham is switching to Lorcana, and then I was basically invited for the NA event, for my first NA event. It was so lucky because these guys were the Lorcana Goons. That's how they call their team. They're ex-Yu-Gi-Oh players too, and they just invited me into their group and into their Airbnb, so I had someone or somewhere to stay with, and it was so nice because the weekend was so much fun. Even if I hadn't topped, I topped in the end, but even if I hadn't topped, I wouldn't even regret traveling there because it was so much fun for them. And we still like what event was that? DLCCL. We still traveled together. We still were in the same Airbnb, so they basically saved my Lorcana travel because the alternative was I was sitting alone in a hotel room and just try to meet new people, and it's quite difficult if you know nobody. So I was quite lucky there in that regard. And for the events afterwards, I met other ex Yu-Gi-Oh players. It's crazy. Like I met so many ex Yu-Gi-Oh players, and then I stayed at their home, and it's quite funny because being at Yu-Gi-Oh actually made my Lorcana journey so much better.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting to see like where those different people switching from a TCG going to another one like end up, because I remember going to Flesh and Blood, and there were like very, very little Yu-Gi-Oh players that I met, but so many Magic players, and like I've never played Magic. I have no clue what you're talking about, but yeah, definitely, it's super helpful. And I also think like with the recent European Championship, like what are you looking forward to the most in the next year? Like obviously your goal must be to go to Worlds someday, right?
Yeah. So right now I have my next tournament is the NA Continentals, which is basically 1 month. And of course, I try my best there to get my Worlds invite. I need to go to top 8, which was a bit easier in Europe because we had less players. I think it's like 32 less players than in America. So it will be a bit harder to top there because now your score must be better. So it's still like really difficult. And afterwards, there's already a new event announced, and that is in Australia. That is quite far. In Australia and in February. This one I still don't know if I want to go because the flight. It's not the problem is not the money, even though it's quite expensive. It's super expensive, but it's the travel time, and it's 24 hours or higher, which like to America I need like 8 to 12 hours, and I barely survive that. And 24 hours, I don't know if I can survive that. That is next level because you barely sleep, you arrive, you're jet lagged like crazy, and then you have to play. I don't know if I can do that, but that would be the next event, and I hope they would turn the ratio of events up because so many players want to play a DLC, but they cannot get in or they don't have time when they actually are. So right now, I just hope they just go higher and higher and higher. And one of my goals, of course, is getting to Worlds, and after that, I just want to win a DLC. Actually, my run always ended in top 8. I have 2 top 8s, which is of course crazy enough, but I just want to win one time. One time.
Yeah, I wish you, of course, best of luck for that journey, and I'm curious to follow it along for sure. What is it really like that when you're looking at the next year that excites you the most? Like,
What do you mean? Sorry?
so what is it that excites you the most about the next year when going after your goals? What are you looking forward to the
Ah,
most?
what I'm looking for the most is because right now we had the first year of Lorcana, and it's not even about my goals. It's about what are they gonna do now because now they got all the experience from this year. It was already really great, but we're still like small problems which are solvable. And now I'm really excited on about like what will they do next year? Because I just expect this game to be really great. They planned the sets ahead until like I don't know set 12 already, something like that. So they have the years planned already ahead, and I just expect like greatness of this game in the next year and the following years. And my goals still stand the same. If I don't make it this year, I still make history of being the first person and right now still the only person who has 2 invites. Um, at least I can say that. And I just want to make history in the game, basically, to break records, um, to make a name in this game. Although some people know me already, not everybody knows me, and I try to be like a pinnacle in the game. Of course, it's difficult, and there's so many great players in this game I have to beat and be better. Right now, I'm not at the top. There are many others who won events and are really consistent too. That I have to overthrow basically, and that's my goal for 2025.
So then let's look at the other side. You talked a little bit about that excitement and the things that you're looking forward to, but is there anything that you're looking at in Disney Lorcana that you're saying like, that's something that I dislike, or maybe even something that you wish would change in the future?
Yeah, I think so. The thing is, they have PPG and Fanfinity, right? And both organizers do a lot of TCGs and they know a lot. And what I don't dislike right now is how their advice is not taken entirely, like too entirely, because there are some small, yeah, how do you call it in English, like Kinderkrankheiten, like some small things that they can easily solve and fix. But right now they still don't do it. For example, the communication was so bad. We didn't know anything before the European Championship, like before 3 weeks before it started. So we didn't know the format, because that is so important. Because right in Lorcana we have a special format compared to other TCGs, and that's a 2-game format, because we only play 2 games and both players can go first. No, they have to go first. That you're forced to. So this format is so different than the best of 3, because in best of 3 means you need to win, and in 2-game format means you draw a lot, or you can draw a lot, because going first, like in most TCGs, is a bit stronger than going second. So if you go first, I go first, and you go first, and we both are playing at a high level, most of the time means we draw. So that means you need to find an edge to 2-0 people, but it also means you don't have to 2-0 your bad matchup, like in the best of 3. In the best of 3, if you face a bad matchup in the triangle or whatever, in the matchup spread, you are forced to play it, and you have to beat somehow, or you just straight up lose. In the 2-game format, you can just say, I draw my bad matchup and I try to 2-0 the rest. That's a valid strategy, and it differs a lot. And we didn't know anything about it until 3 weeks before the tournament itself. I'm like, that's crazy. And the same applies to NA. Like, we barely knew anything about their form, their ACQ and whatnot. So people didn't even try to get a ticket because this was announced way too late. We got information like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago about the NA stuff. I was like, the communication is not good. It was way too slow. But it's not the problem of like the TOs like Fanfinity or PBG. It was the problem of like Disney, because it's being like a big company, and of course big companies always have the problem of being slow or like not responsive, like smaller companies or like single persons like Flesh and Blood, for example. So that is something they have to improve on. There are some other small things they can easily improve on if they just do whatever Fanfinity or PBG is saying. And they also know it. Like, I talk with some people and they know what they can have to improve, but the approval time is always iffy, you know? Like, talking to Disney itself, like, it's in every department, doesn't matter which department, changes in big companies always take a lot of time compared to smaller companies.
Yeah. Right, but honestly, it doesn't sound that bad here. It's like, sure, those smaller things and some things that need to be
not bad at all. It's
along
just
the way.
small things they have to improve on. If they improve on it, I literally cannot even complain about anything. It's really difficult to find stuff to complain on besides some small stuff.
Yeah. Also from like the play style and cards being in the game, there's nothing that you say is like problematic at the moment.
The card design itself is okay. Funny enough, we had a problem card like one set ago where everybody cried about. It's called Diablo, and it's really powerful card, basically also a draw engine and whatever. But now it literally got power crept out of the meta almost, not completely, but it's bad. It's not as good anymore, and suddenly nobody cries for ban anymore. And that was really funny to see that transition of ban this card and then the set release, and everybody like the basically the decks that are being played right now naturally counters that card, and nobody cries about it anymore. It's really funny. Overall, the card design itself, like there was one errata because the card was really disrupting your opponent too hard. Like, it discarded your opponent's hand and was too crazy, and they just errated it. But by errating them, they destroyed it. They destroyed the card entirely. They made 3 changes. One change was good enough to like almost kill that card, but they did 3 and like completely destroy that card. It was crazy. But there was also only the one time they did it. So overall, like, I really enjoyed the card design of Lorcana right now. And it's getting, the only thing I have to note is it's getting faster progressively, but that's quite normal in every game, because if you release more cards, they cannot be as slow as before. they have to be a bit faster and it just keeps going on. And until we reach a point where the game is like reach the base level of speed, because before that the game was really slow the 2 sets ago, or even 3 sets ago was like super slow, but now it's getting a bit faster and faster.
So one thing that I'm quite interested in hearing about that European Championship is like, I saw that announcement of the tournament and how you can like go to the tournament and watch it, even though you're not playing it. And I'm curious, like, is there anything that you can tell, like how did it go, like with those time slots? I'm curious to hear that.
Oh yeah, basically you bought the spectator tickets and you had the AM and PM slot, and they just let you in and watch it from the sidelines. I didn't get much of it because I played and all my friends who went in were basically getting their +1, so we had +1s, and I gave one of my friends them. I basically gave my teammate the +1 from NA, so he could watch all the time. So I actually didn't know how they actually, like, if they actually checked the people in or not. But like there was always someone watching. Like there were so many watchers over the time, like I don't know, 30, 40 watchers. But I didn't get so much of it. Like I was concentrating on playing.
Yeah. All right. So before we come to the next part of the video, is there anything that you want to add to your first year of Lorcana?
I definitely advise people to try it out. There's always smaller events at your locals. It's called Set Championship, where there you can just play for promos and playmat. Just try the game out and see if you like it. And if you like it, you can always try aim higher, go to DLCs and so on, and just have fun. Because when I started the game, I didn't know if I was like performing well or not. Like I didn't expect to perform well like right off the bat. So I just tried to have fun at my first 2 events, and with the fun, the success came due, and I was like, okay, cool. I suddenly topped and just went deep. Like I at my second event, I already got my invite, so it was like, not bad, not bad. But my main goal was always to have fun, because the game is really enjoyable if you just don't try harder too much, because the variants can get you, especially the 2-game format. Like everybody I know, when they experience that format, when they start out, they will hate it. Everybody will hate it. It's crazy because you are getting forced to draw like so many times when your opponent just have the nuts. You cannot do anything to stop it, and then you just draw instead of trying to win the match of game 3. But that's how the game is right now. Maybe they change it for next year, because many people are complaining about it. But best of 3 also have it's almost like Pokemon, where you don't have enough time to play best of 3 sometimes, because people are playing so slow. They take so much time, and you don't get punished as in Yu-Gi-Oh for slow playing to take too long. So I actually don't know what solution they would take, but maybe they would just keep on playing the 2-game format. But just try it out. It is really fun. And the game is really rewarding if you put the time and effort in. Because in my opinion, that's compared to Yu-Gi-Oh! What I experienced was deck building matters a lot here. Like matters insanely. It's literally the difference between winning and losing really close. Like just one card difference can decide that already, because the game is actually slow. So it gives you the time to make cards matter. Your card choices matter.
Right. So I think it's super interesting, even though like I've never been to a big Lorcana event, but just hearing about it. And I'm super curious what the viewers actually on at the moment think about it. So maybe we read some comments after the video is released. But I also want to let all those viewers know that if you want to see episodes like this with Kang on early access, there's actually a Patreon and the YouTube memberships here on the Fabled Academy available for you. But now, Kang, let's dive into Flesh and Blood, actually. And I think for regular viewers of the Fabled Academy, this is a super exciting topic to hear you talk about, because I actually want to dabble a little bit into the differences also between Lorcana, your recent experiences and what I've been experiencing in Flesh and Blood, talking to a lot of the pros there. But before we start diving into the differences, like, what do you know actually about Flesh and Blood? And do you know also players that play the game, even on a high level?
Funny enough, the world winner of Flesh and Blood played at the European Continental too. So I saw him there and I said hello and talked about Flesh and Blood a bit. This is quite funny. Like I saw a tweet about him winning, and then I saw him at the event. I'm like, aren't you the Flesh and Blood world champion? And he was like, yeah. It was so funny. I think he didn't make the top cut in the end, but at least he was there. He was invited. So cool to see. So that's a good example where I can say you can actually play multiple TCGs at a high level, right? If you are really TCG affinitive, he can definitely do it. I can try it too, but I actually don't want to. I also want to spend time with my girlfriend's on, and I don't want to delve that deep into multiple TCGs. But Flesh and Blood, I think that's the only player I know, actually. I know Margin Bay from YouTube, of course. Who else I know? I know some Herove, if you know him, the Croatian One Piece pro.
Oh, no, I don't know him.
Yeah, I can show him later. But I know that one. He played Flesh and Blood too. I think that's it. I don't even know 5 people.
Yeah. So what is it then that you know about Flesh and Blood as a game?
So I saw the game on YouTube mainly when it got like recommended, and I watched a bit. And it was like I was so overwhelmed because you have like equipment, you have I don't know what else, like so many things, and then so many chains with like quick effects and go again. I'm like, damn, to play it, apparently you need to be a big brain, and then you have to remember like the pitch goes under the deck and whatever, and you have to remember that. I'm like, I was a bit overwhelmed, but then I learned the rulings. I'm like, okay, the game at the base level is really easy to learn, at least. Of course, the high level is like super high. Like you have to master, like you have to play so many games, especially, and every set releases so much stuff, right? And then you need to test the matchups to see if like their weaknesses and so on. That's what I know about. Mainly my knowledge comes from watching YouTube games and streams of major events. I try to follow up. I try to understand what the plays are, but that's it mainly.
Yeah. And are there any like for example, here in my area near Paderborn, there are 2 locals that offer Flesh and Blood. Maybe you can let us know like where exactly you live, in which city, and is there any like Flesh and Blood locals there nearby?
Hamburg actually, and I was told there are locals, so I asked a friend of mine who also knows. Rafi, maybe you know him. Raffaello. He's a vendor in for Flesh and Blood. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Nice.
he's playing
Shout out.
Lorcana with me, right?
Nice.
I think he messaged me like an hour ago about Lorcana.
Nice.
Yeah, so he told me that Hamburg is kind of dead for Lorcana, for Flesh and Blood. So I actually don't know, but overall, I'm not a guy that plays locals that often, to be honest. And for example, Lorcana, I played local one time.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's like I don't I play major events or like bigger tournaments normally, and if I don't, I rather spend the time with my girlfriend also.
Yeah.
And I know the scene here seems not that big because I also literally know nobody here who plays Flesh and Blood. So, but at least the game has a good sim, I've heard. So when I actually want to grind it, I can grind the sim.
Yeah. So it's funny that you bring up not playing locals nearly at all, besides at one time, because there's a running gag in Flesh and Blood 2 where one of the Pro Tour champions, Michael Feng, he won like the Pro Tour, which is the second biggest tournament in Flesh and Blood. And he then goes back to locals and like gets destroyed at locals because
that's the thing. Like I go to locals and for example, my main deck in Lorcana is like a control deck, and I go to locals, I face aggro, I'm getting destroyed. Like they half of locals playing aggro. I'm like, I'm not going there.
But I heard actually in Lorcana with these like local tournaments, a pro player also from the Netherlands, former Flesh and Blood player, also heard about Lorcana because there are actually like some insane prizes going on with locals, right? With that like with the Stitch promo this year, right? Was
Yeah,
it
the Stitch
the
promo
Sword
was like an
Championship?
exception. That's what I mean with like I regret not starting early because the Stitch promo was sold for like 600 to 800 at the
Hmm.
beginning, and it was insane. Like you just have to imagine you go to basically in what you compare to Yu-Gi-Oh! An OTS championship, you win the playmat, which is like I don't know 200 to 300 bucks, and then the Stitch promo, which is 600 to 800, and then you go to the next one. uh, and I know some people who farm like 6K or so just from playing locals. I'm like, what the fuck? That's basically YCS winning price level. I'm like, that's crazy. But I missed that area because the promos after that weren't nearly that much. It still was still like the promo I won after that was $100, 80 to $100. I sold for 100,
Hmm.
yeah, about 100 each. Was okay, but not the main reason why I played. I played to test. I played to have at least like a competitive environment and to learn the game, because right um, at the time when I played my first ERC. Because playing the first ERC was actually the first Lorcana event I attend, so it was so bad. And then I played two set champs, which was on Saturday and then Sunday the week afterwards, and then the American event was directly afterwards, so 2 weeks in between the two majors. And because of the set champs, I had enough practice, and now I was crushing at the NA one. I got top 16. Unfortunately, I misplayed a bit in the top 16, but at least I got my invite for the NA one, so I was really happy. That was my goal actually, to get an invite and then getting the invite in Europe. So well, it was quite good.
So, talking about those local tournaments, then there's like something going on in Flesh and Blood at the moment, and that is actually them announcing that they will have for the next season what's called a gem pack, and that is basically like an OTS or tournament pack that we had or still have in Yu-Gi-Oh, which I think is like very exciting. Also makes it like kind of like interesting going even for a player like myself who doesn't really compete on a high level to locals and actually has like the possibility of gaining an insane prize, but we don't know yet exactly like what it will be in there. We know
That
like
sounds
the
good.
ratios, like
Sounds really good.
rarities, but yeah.
I
And in
wish
Flash Blood, it's
oh
yeah,
I wish Lorcana had that too. Like that's one of the
yeah,
small things I wish Lorcana had too, because we need like the basic like the flesh and blood system of tournaments. What I've seen, like the how it builds up, the ladder to go to world flood. It looks quite nice in flesh and blood.
yeah. Yeah, it's one of the best things actually that I hear on and on in Flesh and Blood talking, yeah, by the players competing in these high stakes events is that the tournament structure is so good and is so fulfilling to be a player in Flesh and Blood. Um, it is insane actually. Like people love it there, and even you heard about it, right?
Is it true? So I've heard it now from multiple people, sources, and also good flesh and blood player. If you're crazy in flesh and blood, you will top every single time, or like almost every single time.
So
In One Piece, it's
I'm not
true.
a crazy good player, but maybe some of the really good players watching this can yeah can write down their comments. But definitely it's a recurring theme that I noticed during those 3 years being in Flesh and Blood that the high level players that I meet they top more often than you would assume. Like you see the same names over and over again, and it also is I think a testament to what you were saying from looking at it from outside. It is really a matter of how much you practice, how deep you stick your nose into the game, and yeah, how much knowledge you have in the end. Because I think you can even compare it to like high level sports, where in some cases it is really like about the repetition that you have and like how automatically some things get to you. And it really feels to me like talking to the Flesh and Blood players and seeing the environment that Flesh and Blood is exactly that. Like you need a certain amount of practice to really, yeah, get those rewards in the end.
And that's also a thing just from outside view, right? Looking at Flesh and Blood, it's not only about the pricing, because the pricing in Flesh and Blood is okay, it's good, but it's not nearly as like One Piece and Lorcana level, right? Like the people cash out like insane amounts in Lorcana and One Piece, but that's not the point. The point is the structure, the how the company treats the players, and how you feel playing these games, right? That's like I think it's more important than the pricing. Pricing is always a good icing on the cake, but the underlying thing, the respect and what they do for the players, that is the difference, and why I was mainly looking for another TCG. I complained about this stuff like years ago, every single year, but I had no alternative besides Pokemon and Magic, which I also didn't like enjoy that much. And when One Piece and Lorcana came out, even I even remember the time when Flesh and Blood came out. My locus for Yu-Gi-Oh started advertising it, and I didn't took it seriously because I mean there was no big like major tournament support yet. This was just like locals and release, and then I forgot about it. But maybe I should have started looking into it earlier. I don't know. The same happened with Lorcana One Piece. I started way too late every single time. I should start like right at the beginning, to be honest. But yeah, that's a thing that I see in all the new TCGs, that the companies and so on just put so much more effort in to give us players a better experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely about the environment that you can step in with when you're looking at going out from your current TCG. I was also in that position, not as a pro player, but it definitely got me thinking. Also, like when you're aging, like I think you're really like taking some things from a different perspective, right? Like compared to like when you're 16 or 18, going to locals and having fun with your friends, and now nearly being 30 or over 30, and you take life from a different view, I think.
Yeah, that's also true. Like, of course, everything you definitely get a different view, and I think Yu-Gi-Oh is also a game which requires you to be a bit younger, to be honest, and or have at least less obligations, because if you have kids and so on, it's so difficult to grind the game actually. You can still do it, but you will use a lot of your free time. I can say that. And almost every single dad I know cannot take that game that seriously, because you just need to commit so much time. So that's also a thing that you have to acknowledge. But if you have the time on, I think the game is still like really fun, and many people will still enjoy it. Like there's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, the age definitely you can see it in Lorcana too. Like the age difference in Lorcana and Yu-Gi-Oh and then any other TCG I've experienced is crazy. Because in Lorcana, when you sit at the major event, you're on the top tables, you can face like a 60-year-old, 55-year-old player. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. That was a culture shock, you know. Like my first event, I drew the first round. Second round, I played against a man who could have been my dad, like over 60, and he just played. He destroyed me. Like I lost 2-0. I'm like, oh God. It was so funny. He destroyed me. I'm like, oh shit. That's something you will never face in like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or like maybe not even Flesh and Blood. And funny enough, my first locals and my only locals I attend, I went there, and let's say that the average age was like 35 or so, or even higher. I don't know. It was quite there were quite many older players who enjoyed the game, because the game is really fairly easy to join and to maintain a certain level is quite easy. I don't know about Flesh and Blood though. I've heard the game is really easy if you play it casually, but I don't know how big the gap is between like mid game and the high level.
So at first I want to say, like, it's great to hear you talk about those different people that are actually enjoying Lorcana and that are actually being drawn to the game. I mean, of course, it must be inherent to the IP, right? Because Disney has been around for so long, and it speaks to much more people than like, here's this new game, Flesh and Blood. And of course, I don't want to say that not a different variety of people can be drawn to Flesh and Blood, but I think just that's so uniquely about Lorcana that I think don't even can be recreated by Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh to a certain degree. And coming back to like this, like how is the gap between being a new player or casual player and then going to the top? I think in Flesh and Blood, like I said, I can't speak from my own experience. I don't play at the pro level, but I'm talking to a lot of those pro players, and the difference can be quite big, actually, I think, because when you're looking at those players that are actually taking the time and doing the grind, I think Flesh and Blood is much more similar to Yu-Gi-Oh, like you say. Like, you need a tremendous amount of time to really dive into the game. And I even see local players here in my area that are taking the game pretty seriously and are competing at a local level. But then when they are going to tournaments compared to YCS, which is called a calling here in Flesh and Blood, it's so difficult to then compete and go out and actually go on with these elite players that are coming to the events. And I think that's also super interesting. Like, if you want to step it up from the local area and go to a calling to then face those people. But honestly, like, Flesh and Blood is super like competitive even on the local level, and that's like what I think makes it also harder for newer players to then come to locals and try it out, because even though, like you say, on a casual level, it can be pretty easy to play Flesh and Blood, but then you're going to locals and players are sitting there with their like 500 euro decks, and either you have some of the cards to compete and come to the top or not. And I think that's something which I really point out, definitely on Flesh and Blood, and hope that it changes in the future. But I think also on the flip side, looking at it, like, Flesh and Blood really has like a tight system for those reprints. We both know
I've
it,
heard
right?
about the deck prices. Like,
Yeah.
is it true like that the decks? I mean, if you get the staples, you don't have to get them anymore afterwards. But
Yeah.
the initial buy-in is like 1K or so, or even more.
Yeah,
Roughly.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. If you want to get like all of the staples, I made some recent videos about them, looking at the markets, because, like I said, I nearly don't own any of these staples because I don't play the expensive decks. But then I was like, okay, I remember some of the prices from early on in the year, and definitely those staple prices has increased over time, because there are not really that many reprints made by the makers of the game, but intentionally, because funnily enough, like some of the creators of the game were having like a Yu-Gi-Oh singles business back in the day. And also, like, with that knowledge behind it, they want to make sure that those game staples are holding value. Not said that they never reprint it, but they don't really want to go out and print like 10 different versions of it over 2 years.
Right now in Yu-Gi-Oh is crazy because they do the rarity collection thingies, and when they reprint anything in there, it gets released in 7 rarities. So your card value is destroyed if they reprint it there. Much better for the people who cannot afford it. Like, I don't really care. Even if I have a full collection of that, I don't really care, as long as I can play. I don't care that my value didn't get destroyed. But some people treat Yu-Gi-Oh as a stock market, and then they buy out stuff, and then the reprint hits is so funny every single time, because then they have to shell it out. And you can definitely see who bought it out, because then they try to sell it like 30-40 copies of expensive card. And I've heard in Flesh and Blood, when they actually reprint, the price doesn't even drop that hard. Is that true?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
at all?
definitely.
Like, not even at all sometimes.
Sometimes that's true. Yeah, I think, like, for certain cards that you really need to compete in the game, there are, like, you mentioned it too, we have like these equipments that you're having on the board nearly all of the time in the game until you really crack them and get value out of them. But then there are also these staple cards called generics in Flesh and Blood, which are kind of similar to hand traps, which you can also play in any deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? But you really need some of those to compete, like, straight up. If you don't have them, like, you don't really see like top 8 or top 16 deck lists without these cards. And so even when they reprint some of these cards, it's been quite a time, actually. So I'm hoping to see some of them in those like gem packs or other reprint sets that we see in the next year.
That would make sense.
So I think I just can assume that they will take this route rather than going down and being like, okay, we have a reprint set here and there's just any staple in it that you need at the moment, and then the next set comes up with the next staple. but rather like doing, okay, we know that, for example, like a certain equipment is needed to play the game. And they addressed that in the past with Fjendal Spring Tunic, actually. That's like a chess equipment that you just straight up need for some decks. And they reprinted it, and actually the price came down. But not only because
Oh.
of the reprints, but also because they made sure that there are other options to choose from. Because with those equipments, it's like we have these generics, like the Fjendal Spring Tunic, but then also we have those class-specific ones, which, for example, if you choose like to play a warrior, there's a very good warrior chest equipment that you can just pick, and that is like even lower in price, like the generic piece. But you kind of, if you want to play at the high level, have also access to that generic staple.
Yeah, that's nice. But the buy-in's still expensive.
Yeah, and I was curious on your opinion on that, because also when you're not only looking at it from a deck price, right? You're talking about it from like, what pool of cards do I need to buy to actually compete in the game? Not only like buying one deck, but if you really want to get to those bigger tournaments and get a shot on the top placement, you need to have a variety of decks, right? Not only like one deck to choose from.
So since I came from Yu-Gi-Oh, and we had formats that were cheap, 100, 200 euro decks, and then one set can change everything. 2 sets can change, and suddenly your meta deck costs like 1k if you don't have the staples. Or right now the Fiendsmith Ryzios it's basically the best deck now. Costs like, if you have to buy everything new, it costs over 1k. And in a volatile game like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you can lose a bunch of value just by one reprint or like 2 reprints, that can hurt a lot. So I don't like that. But what I like is when you buy in, even though it's expensive, and your cards hold value, and you know they will hold most of the value. That's what I really like, especially with the ban system of Flesh and Blood, right? With the Living Legends and so on, you know when stuff is about to get banned, so you don't like overextend into that. So that helps a lot, like a lot. And I really like it if you buy in, and I assume you are already a TCG enthusiast if you even look at Flesh and Blood, because Flesh and Blood is not a game that you start just by being a new guy to TCG, basically, like out of nowhere, right? You have to have someone recommend it to you, or like you saw it somewhere, like, or like you are already a TCG enthusiast, because like Lorcana has the Disney IP, One Piece has One Piece, right? They all have something behind it. Flesh and Blood doesn't have it. So if you're already a TCG enthusiast, you should already know what you're getting yourself into. But then I like that you have the stable, the stability of the prices in that game. And also, of course, the generic card, as you said, are expensive. I like that you can use them everywhere, basically. That's not like color specific or class specific. Like in Lorcana, if I compare to Lorcana, you can buy some colors. For example, I start with Ruby, which is red, Sapphire, which is blue, and Amethyst, which is purple. So these 3 colors, there are 3 more colors, but the 3 other colors, to play them competitively, is super expensive. And these colors together, I bought right at the peak. So when I bought my cards, the cards spiked. So they spiked to roughly like 400 euros for all 3 colors. And now, if I had to buy them now, they're like 300 maybe. It's not that expensive. And I can build 3 decks out of these 3 colors, because every single combination of the color is actually viable. So that is quite good. The other side of the color spectrum, for example, steel, or like steel is actually just gray, like steel. Amber is yellow, and emerald is green. If you buy these 3 color combinations and try to make the best decks out of it, it will cost you like $800 or so. It's quite expensive. That is what I don't like when decks are that expensive right out the gate in such an early state of the game, right? In Lorcana. But on the other hand, we don't have reprints. How they treat the game is literally they print it like to death. Like they print one set and they print it until like it's satisfied, because it's Ravensburger. We're both German, right? It's a board game company, and they just print. They print it to the dirt every single
Yeah.
time. And every game, like you will go into any store that sells games, whatever, puzzles, whatever, they are never sold out, right? There's always the Ravensburger games are still always in stock. And that's basically how they treat Lorcana too, which is kind of bad for TCG itself, but they don't really care as long as the sales are there.
Yeah.
So we right now we don't have reprints. We might get reprints because we had a shortage in set one, and I think only set one, and that's why many set one cards are really expensive. They start to reprint it already and with like extra, like for example, like this gift set. This is not set one, but they do like promotional sets and so on with the set one stuff. So maybe they reprint it, but right now how our structure is, it's literally we have the cards we got. That's it. But the decks itself are not that expensive compared to Yu-Gi-Oh or Lorcana, but still quite expensive. Pokemon though is like the best example, right? $50, $100 for a best deck. That's unbeatable. You cannot beat that. And One Piece is roughly like 200-ish, 300 max for low rare.
So when you're looking at the price, like you dabbles a little bit about like what the barrier is, sure. Like when you're looking at what kind of cards you need to get either in Lorcana or Flesh and Blood, but like what kind of deck price do you think like should a budget deck have? Because I'm very curious on your opinion on that. I heard very different opinions lately, but when you're hearing about the budget deck and then looking at Flesh and Blood, what would you consider being like budget and you trying it out?
So I have to say, I always, even though inflation is a bit weird in TCG, you have to calculate a bit in, right? When I started our TCGs like 8 years ago, I would say budget's like $50. But now the $50 are way over 100. So compared to then, it's like, yeah, I think it's actually 100. So for me, budget decks should be like around 100 now, 100, maximum 150 if you want to upgrade it just after a while, 150. That should be a budget deck. I don't know if Flesh and Blood has it. Lorcana has it like enough. Like there are many decks there in that range that can beat the tier 1 decks. Not that consistently, but they can do it. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Same thing. Like you can run a €200 deck or whatever and still beats certain decks. Because many cards got reprinted to the dirt. Yeah, I don't know about Flesh and Blood though.
So, looking at the recent examples of high-tier tournaments like Battle Harden's Callings and of course the World Championship, like the cheapest deck I think that you see in the tops is like around 400. And I think that is like roughly the point that you're looking at a Flesh and Blood deck and being like, okay, that's at least the amount I need to spend on a deck. But I think like the top tier decks in the format, also being as in a deck called Assassin at the moment is like even €1,000, so comparable to Yu-Gi-Oh top decks. But I don't think really that you could take it at the moment, at least with like a €150 to
So
being
the
at
thing
the
is
top
like,
8.
what do you expect to a budget? Like, what's your definition of budget? Is it like a cheap deck that can compete, or is it a cheap deck that where you can have fun at locals? Because budget for me is I go to locals and can have fun, or because in many TCGs, even at locals, people play meta, right? They don't play meta at the highest level, which means you can leverage that by even playing like a budget deck, right? So for me, budget is not being able to build a cheap deck and go to a meta tournament, like a high stake tournament, because automatically if you have a good pricing in your game, your cards will reach a higher level of money, right? The only exception is Pokemon, but it's the set structure of Pokemon. Like the cards are so cheap in Pokemon just from the set structure, that it makes the game itself cheap. You can just kind of compare it to other games. But I don't think that you have to be able to compete at a major event with a budget deck. That's not the point of a budget deck. A budget deck is just, the name just says it, right? Paying low amount of money to be able to play, to have fun, but not to compete, because there is no replacement for a, I don't know, €100 card. If there was a replacement, the card wouldn't be €100 or like 200, whatever. And that's why, just from definition, for me, budget decks are automatic fun decks. And that's not bad, that's not good. That's just the straight up definition for me. Yeah. And I'm also totally fine with decks being at a high level of money when the price pool is there. Like I don't have, like, if you are playing for like a, I don't know, 5 figures, then I can see the cards being more expensive. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, that's the craziest part. For people who are playing locals and regions mainly, and they spend like 1K to play that newest shiny deck in lower because in high rare it costs like 3K or so, or 2K. And I'm like, bro, you are spending so much money to play locals or regional. If you are like a super high, like a high level YCS player, do what you want. But people are playing just locals and regionals and spend that kind of money, and then they complain about whatever. Well, like, if they complain about one time that they don't have enough money end of the month, then I know why. I definitely know why.
Yeah, definitely. I know those stories. I'm happy I'm not longer dabbling with those stories, though, to be honest.
We know enough, right? We're in enough communities to hear the stories.
So coming back to those budget options, I think it is looking from the outside on Flesh and Blood and seeing those high lists that are costing like 400 to 1,000, 1,200 euros. Definitely there are these budget options, but they are not topping the big events. That's, I think, why you're not seeing them as frequently. But if you're diving into the game, it's definitely possible to play with 100 to 150 euros. I'm doing that myself, actually, like just going to the local armory that are called Flesh and Blood. And it's like an armory deck, like a starter deck with you're only buying one, not 3 of, like in Yu-Gi-Oh! And you have everything that you need. And I love that. It's like straight up 30 to 40 euros. There are, I think, 5 different options at the moment, with 4 new ones being released in the next year. And I just think that's a perfect starting point just to try it out, and then do like €100 upgrade or something. Is everything all right?
I've heard a lot about it in recent news about Flesh and Blood, that the Armor decks are really good there. I wish we had that in Lorcana, because the starter decks in Lorcana are just pile of bulk. Like, I can literally grab my bulk here, give you whatever cards of 2 colors, and that's equivalent to the starter decks, so it's not good. You literally cannot compete with that at all. And I wish we had that. Yu-Gi-Oh had that to a certain level, right? You can. There were always some situations and formats where you can buy like 3 structure decks and put just a few cards in. It's so good, right? But most of the time, Yu-Gi-Oh is also producing deck cores in the structure decks only, right? You put out the core, and then you buy a bunch of extra cards, and then you have your meta deck, which is almost like, it's still expensive. It's not cheap at all.
Yeah, I was wondering like how it is in Lorcana, because I remember like the premiere for the first chapter, and they had those starter decks. And I thought like just getting into the game is pretty nice, buying those starter decks, but how it's evolving.
Okay.
No,
it's not even close to being competitive viable to just go from the starters. You need to buy the cards. But again, the deck itself, like, especially if you choose cheaper combinations, that's good enough. Funny enough, in Lorcana, you can actually one trick. You can actually, like right now, the power creep is quite slow in to a certain point that you can literally play the same color combination since set 1 or set 2 or set 3. Like I played for 3 sets now, I play the same color combination because they keep printing support for my deck. That's crazy. But the other decks are also getting stronger and stronger, like progressively, and you can one trick. That's the cool part. And I cannot say that about Yu-Gi-Oh! Or other games. I mean, One Piece you can also one trick because you have leaders that can support, and a good leader won't die that easily. But of course, you can always switch to a better deck. I just enjoy it that it's possible to do it. So
Yeah.
you can just buy one color combination. Each set they release a bit of support for it. You need to spend like, if you buy early enough, just a few bucks. Sometimes you need to spend like $50, $60, but that's like okay for entire set, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to go down that road because when you are able to play and consistently go into a deck and you know like, okay, there's like this 1 or 2 year period of time and I don't really need to worry about my deck being dead, right? And that's what I at least think in Flesh and Blood they are doing pretty good too. If you are choosing like a hero class that you want to play, let's say you want to play Guardian or Warrior, then there are at first different options that you can choose from, different characters. But also there is this system in Flesh and Blood where they're doing like a main set and it's evolving around one of the themes. Let's say there is a Warrior deck coming out. A Warrior, or the next set. Actually, let's talk about the next set. It's called the Draconic and Assassin. Those are the 2 themes of the next set. And there is an expansion slot in there. And in that slot, they are bringing out cards for the other classes that are not included into the set. So you're at least getting something out of it. And you can just, commit to that one class then. And I think that's pretty
cool.
neat.
That's cool.
So one thing we talked about a lot is the prices. And I think that's like the last point here I want to make in the video is comparing a little bit more about the prices in Lorcana and Flesh and Blood. And I think you mentioned like Flesh and Blood having a good pricing system. So what do you exactly know about the pricing system on Flesh and Blood?
So what I've seen was always you get cash prizes, which is cool, and then you get like extra packs with like gold foils or whatnot, and these can also range from different prices. I actually don't know the exact prices. I've heard like there are some gold foils that are 2K or whatnot. Some are like, I don't know, 500 or 200 or so. So I actually don't know the prices of that or the range. I've just heard something. But that's it. Like, and the big prizes, of course, are the Pro Tours. I think the first was 20K or so. And the gold foil one, Busa. And then you get like invites, the PT invites or whatever, that you can sell or use yourself for the major events, which I find crazy and funny. That you can just go to, you can use it for words, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was curious on your
that's
opinion on
crazy.
this.
Yeah, that's actually crazy that you can just buy your way into words. Then, to be honest, I wouldn't like it that much. Like for continentals also, cool, buying your way to continental, but for worlds it's quite extreme.
Yeah. So let's talk about worlds for a second here, because that's my biggest point actually of Flesh and Blood competitive player. Like I underline that statement for sure that in my opinion too, Flesh and Blood is the most competitive TCG at the moment. But then there is this like buy yourself into the world championship thing, and it's kind of tricky. I hope it's getting different in the future, but I can also see why they're doing it too. Like they have like 2 Pro Tours in the year at the moment, and that's like basically you can't buy yourself into that, can only qualify for it. But then the World Championship is an opportunity to also compete at one of those high levels. It's comparable to the Pro Tour, but honestly, the pricing is like nearly double the amount of the Pro Tour. And so it's comparable, but it doesn't really feel like when you're looking at Lorcana or Yu-Gi-Oh! And being like, okay, this is like a day and night in comparison. Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Honestly, like, you know it.
Getting worse in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is hard. Nokana too. I was so close to get into it. I have another chance, so let's see. But buy-in is really weird for the competitive integrity. At that point, they should have made like words exclusive and make the Pro Tour more accessible. In that case, would sound better. Like making the Pro Tour harder to get into than the words seems weird, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the tournament prizes, I think, actually are pretty good. Looking at Flesh and Blood, like you said, you have these cash prizes, which are, I think, of course, when you're looking at Lorcana, you have these amazing like tournament prizes in terms of like the promos and the golden
Yeah,
Mickeys and
it's not
stuff
even
like that,
much.
right?
It's just that people pay so much for it.
Yeah, that's right. But then Flesh and Blood, you can be certain that okay, if I top 16, I get X amount, and if I getting first
Yeah.
place in Worlds, like I have 100K. That's crazy, and I think that's pretty good for those players that are actually looking to pursue a more like high professional career in those games. It's for certain that only very few players can make it, and that you can not really build upon that every year. At least we
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet, but there are definitely players that are proving that it's possible to constantly top those events, and at least make partially back. That's pretty good, I
Yeah,
think.
I don't think outside of Magic I've ever seen someone goes pro TCG player in terms of like
Yeah,
just playing the game. But you can make good amount of money. Like you can make a living out of it if you go coaching, content. Like not only like buying, selling a bit next to it. Like you don't need to go only on playing, right? Like many players
yeah,
I know, they have normal jobs, but they also do like a bit of coaching next to it. Like just
yeah.
getting extra money in the month, end of month. It's really cool. I also do a bit of coaching here and there. Right now I don't really want to do that much coaching because quite tiresome to teach so many people.
Yeah.
But it's like just don't only concentrate on playing. Like if you build around it, I know many people who can make enough from just that, but they just do more. Like they earn so much money. Like you can take Puck for example. Puck don't even have to work in finance, but he will make so much more money in finance. And then on top of that, he streams, he makes videos, he makes
Yeah.
coaching, right? So much money that he makes. Like he essentially, I don't know the exact number, but he can essentially double his income by doing the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff he does, and then
Yeah.
in his main job. But you need time, of course. Like I think he has no other obligations besides working and playing TCG, so you need the time for that, of course.
Yeah, that's true. It's also the lifestyle that you are committing to, right? Being like
Yeah.
into one thing, like heads down. And at least
There's
like
nothing that people should be jealous of. Like
yeah,
TCG lifestyles, like it's not great in terms of like people think, oh, they always see. I have so many people talk to me. They say,
mm,
"Damn, how can you find the time and the money to travel?" I'm like, bro, it's not that it's not that crazy. First, it's not that huge amount of money that you need to travel if you do it cheap, and also the traveling and so on is so hard on your health and so on. It's not
yeah,
actually like enjoyable most of the time. The time at the term is of course enjoyable, but the before and after is not really enjoyable. Um,
yeah,
and it's also nothing you have to be jealous of. And in my opinion, like it's not even a lifestyle that you should aspire. Like doing hardcore TCG or whatnot. It's more like for example, I like that. I like traveling for TCG, so I want to do it, but I wouldn't recommend to nobody because it's not safe, it's not stable, it's nothing like that.
yeah.
Um, and yeah,
Yeah, that's some very wise but also honest advice here in the end of the video. Definitely, I have to say I made so many different opinions on that throughout the last 3 years, talking to so many different like high level players. But definitely that is a recurring theme that should just brought up. Like in the end, like what is it worth it, and what kind of emotions are you putting into it? And what are you committing to it too, like from that point on? Because playing the games should always be in the first place, either way, if you are competing at locals or at the highest level, be about having fun and making those
yeah, yeah,
connections in the game.
yeah, exactly. And if someone can manage to like get the grind, get the bags, and still have
Yeah,
fun and still manage every other obligations they have, then yeah, just go for it. But if you already have like so much to do, not enough time, like just play the game at the level you're comfortable with. Like don't push yourself into oh, I also want to be the top or whatnot, because it,
Yeah,
depending on the game, it can suck the soul out of you. It can suck the fun out of the game,
that's
and
right.
that's not good in my opinion.
Yeah. And honestly, it's not only about playing the game. It's even when I had that experience on my content creator journey too. Like, I had to step
Mm.
down for a time and really, really refocus on what it's all about. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's never a stop. Like you have to put it on, like on yourself, right? Like when you have to stop, especially when you're self-employed, right? Like when do you stop working? When do you stop the grind? It's
yeah,
always like that.
exactly. So what do you want to say here at the end? Are there any shout outs that you want to give?
Wow, the video was so long. So yeah, shout outs to my friends I made in Yu-Gi-Oh and Lorcana. That makes my entire journey enjoyable and fun. Also shout out to you because we are playing Yu-Gi-Oh together. Um, I know. Just shout out to the people who makes the games enjoyable and fun.
All right, that's a good ending point. Kang, thank you so much for taking this time coming here on the Fabled Academy.
Thank you.
And for all the viewers still on, we have the next episode just right here.